And I do have 12:30, so I'm going to go ahead and get us going. Well, some people may still join, and that's all right. But welcome to our first OLA EDII Lunch and Learn. Today's topic is serving the deaf community. I'm Megan Hollingsworth, and I'll be your moderator today. So what we're going to do for today is I'm going to introduce our speaker, Jennifer Lindsey, here in a minute. But just a reminder to please, if you could, keep yourself muted until we are going to have a Q&A time, like the last 10 minutes, around 1:20. But if you have a question or think of one before that, just drop it in the chat, and I'll remember to ask those to Jennifer then, or you can also speak up when we open up the Q&A as well. And just some reminders as well about Zoom accessibility for closed captioning. You can enable the live transcript at the bottom of your Zoom. And just a reminder that there will also be a link to the evaluation towards the end. I'll post that link in the chat. There's other EDI sessions coming up, so look for those as well and sign up for those. And I'll say some more at the end as well, but I'm just going to kick us off here and get us started. Just a reminder that we are recording. If you're attending today, you're going to get a copy of this recording, or if someone wasn't able to attend and they signed up, they'll get the recording as well after this session is over. I'm going to go ahead and introduce. I'm going to stop sharing so Jennifer can get set up here, and I'm going to introduce our speaker today, Jennifer Lindsey, who's going to speak about serving the deaf community. Jennifer Lindsey is a branch manager of the Park Memorial Library in the Southern Oklahoma Library System. Welcome, Jennifer, and we're excited to have you today. She's been the project manager for 2 libraries and transforming communities' focus on small and rural libraries initiatives, and one engaging the deaf community and one on resources on homelessness. So she's going to speak more to her experiences, and we're excited to have her today. Again, mute yourself otherwise, and I'll keep an eye on the chat and take it over, Jennifer.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
Okay. Let's go back. Okay, so yeah, so today we're going to talk about serving the deaf community. All right, so a little about me. I've been the branch manager here at Parker Memorial Library for a little over 3 years. We're part of the Southern Oklahoma Library System. And we're just here in Sulphur. If you're unfamiliar, we're like across the street from the Chickasaw National Recreation Area. And tourism is a big part of the Sulphur community. We're about 5,000 people who actually live here, but we see hundreds of visitors throughout the year coming to the park and to the Chickasaw Cultural Center. And that's a lot of what takes place in our town. The other big thing in our town is that we are home to the Oklahoma School for the Deaf. So for a town of 5,000, we have an awful lot of deaf people living in our community or just coming through our community. Oklahoma School for the Deaf is run by the Department of Rehabilitation Services. And so when most people think of OSD, they're thinking of like a preschool through 12th grade school, which is true. They have that. They have a mixture of day students, so students who live here and go just during the school day, as we would normally think of like a public school. They also have dorm students who are bused in on Sunday nights and live here through Thursday and then go home to the weekend, which is a popular option for students who their families live in, the other parts of the state, so that they're not driving every day. However, I wanted to point out that while it's called like School for the Deaf, part of their mission statement is to be a statewide resource on deafness. So there's also a lot of programs based at OSD, a lot of which I'll go over today, that are open to any of you, wherever you are in the state. Okay. So how I got started in all of this is that while I said there's a lot of deaf people in Sulphur, there weren't a lot of people coming into the library. I had people who would come in and maybe make copies every once in a while. There was a group of deaf crafters who would come in, but for the amount of people that we could be serving, we weren't serving them. So I was looking for opportunities. I found ALA has this Libraries Transforming Communities initiative, and they had one that was specifically focused on small and rural libraries. It was my first grant application. So I was really like, oh my gosh, this would be perfect, but I don't know if I'll get it. But apparently they liked something that I said. Now we did get money to like kind of kickstart my project, but I wanted to point out, like, the LTC training is actually free on the ALA website. I think you have to put in, like, you don't actually have to be an ALA member. They may ask you to like create an account with your email, but what the LTC training does is it helps you learn to facilitate conversations in your community, especially conversations that might get tense or awkward in any way, and it just helps you really plan out what's going to happen. So reaching out to a group you're unfamiliar with, like I was with the deaf community, and the fact that there was also a language barrier, all of this was really helpful. So we had to have a community meeting. I had 2 meetings as part of this project. One was with OSD staff. In particular, it was mostly dorm staff that attended. And then I had a meeting with the wider deaf community, which was really interesting because like about half the people there I had not seen in the library before. They just saw that I was having a meeting and they saw the words deaf and interpreter and they came out, and it was really great. I learned a whole lot. And so a lot of what is in this presentation is stuff that comes from that meeting and what the people told me themselves. I broke the conversation into 3 parts: library services, programs, and ASL fluency support. So that's what we're going to go over today. So one of the major parts of the conversation was people feeling left out because of inaccessibility. And that's inaccessibility in the library and within our larger community. So I would say probably a good half of the conversation was just letting people air out those feelings of frustration and anger, because they want people to know. Everyone wants others to know how they're feeling about things. So, it was humbling because you never want to hear that your public library isn't accessible. But it was good because from there we can move forward. So ideas that came from that meeting, they want library staff who know ASL. So I've now taken ALA's online course for ASL for librarians. So now I'm able to like check people out, help them with their copies, and do just some basic things around the library in ASL, which has made a big difference because now people, they don't feel like they have to call up a neighbor who's hearing to come into the library. Interpreters were also a major point because if they show up to a program, they want to be able to understand everything going on, and that people want to be able to talk to others who are there. Like we have regular craft nights, so they want interpreters. Other things that I learned, people asked for more adult programming that was accessible. I was under the impression that kind of OSD had some things for the deaf community. Turns out they really hadn't been hosting much. So that was definitely a gap in our community that the library could help with. Because like we have programs, let's make them accessible. There was also a lot of talk about including the day students at OSD, because sometimes with OSD, their extracurriculars or stuff that happen like after school or in the evenings that the day students don't always get to attend. So, so I've kind of been working with the school to open up more of this stuff. And then we also had this idea about doing a Q&A about the windmills. I wanted to stick that on here because we have a couple of wind farms that have opened not far from Sulphur. So just know when you're dealing with any population, like not everything they're going to really be interested in and want is going to be connected to whatever demographic box that they're in. So, yeah, we were talking about deafness, but they also have other things that they're curious about. I'm still working on finding one of the companies that engineers the windmills to come speak, but I'm working on it. So, yeah. So then library services, because I had these conversations about a year and a half ago. So this is kind of just some of the stuff that we've done here to improve the library. So the first thing when you're dealing with a deaf patron, this link is just some like basics. Let's see if I can get it to pull up. So this is from the Friends of Libraries for Deaf Action. And it has a big long list of different things to consider, which I highly recommend reading through. But I just want to focus if you know sign language, tell them, but don't assume all deaf people know or use sign language. And also use paper and pen. Like it's around Sulphur, it's very common that a lot of our deaf community have ASL literacy because they're here and they're connected to school.
Yeah, so you'll just make all of your salad dressings and then let people put their lettuce.
Okay, so we have that. But a lot of times, especially I see it here with the kids, is they're being raised by hearing parents. The majority of deaf kids have hearing parents, and so they need they may not know sign language, or they may not be able to keep up with their sign language in the summertime. So it's very important to just to work with anyone who comes into your library on the best way to communicate with them. So some will prefer paper, some might prefer sign language. So just be open. Okay, this other thing here, Autism Unveiled is a documentary. And I just found it really helpful to watch to understand more of the deaf community. The documentary, it talks to a lot of different deaf people. And it is also, as they say at the opening, it is captioned for the signing impaired, which I found to be an interesting twist, because we always think of how we have to make things accessible for people who are different. But the thing is, when deaf people are among themselves, it's the rest of us that are that aren't able to understand. Oh yeah, I was gonna make a PDF of the slides. So yeah, we'll see how I can send that out. Hopefully maybe with the evaluation or something. Okay. Let's see. Oh, okay. So then just basic reaching the deaf community. One of the things that I found very helpful in Oklahoma is following the Facebook communities. There's two main Facebook groups. There's Deaf News in Oklahoma, which is well, there used to be a group that was like Oklahoma Deaf Events, but they got like hacked or something. So it's now Deaf News in Oklahoma. And that has been a great page if you're looking for deaf events to attend, or if you're want to advertise something from your library, you can post the flyer. Same with Oklahoma Deaf Community. It's a little more like people chat or they'll rant a little more on that page. So a lot of what I do on that one is just kind of learn, what about issues that are happening. And then Oklahoma School for the Deaf, they just have a really informative page because they'll let you know what all they're doing. If you have anyone from OSD visit your school or your library, like they'll post pictures of it. And it's just good to connect with them. So, and then also like attend events in your community. There are ASL chats in most corners of the state. So there's usually some options. If there's not an ASL chat near you, like that's when you should start one. And it's because it can be a great opportunity for your library. We also try and figure out ways to offer email and text options for library communications. My library, we've had an email option for quite a while. We only had got text options like 3 years ago. It was around the same time I started. And it has been a game changer because now when people request books, CRC will automatically send them text messages of, hey, your book has arrived, or, oh, your book is late, please turn it in. All of that has been automated and they can get it in a text message that they can read instead of us trying to phone call. Because there are options for doing phone calls where, you have someone who will interpret and do the call. But for so much, a lot of people will prefer text messages or an email. Oh, and I do just want to say, this is me actually attending an event. So if you don't recognize him, so that's me, and that is Wawa, who performed at the halftime at the Super Bowl, because he did a conference here at OSD. So, attend the deaf events. They can be really awesome. I also just felt really proud because I managed to ask a patron to take my picture in sign language. So I just felt like it was a big moment. Collection development. I found it really hard to find books related to deafness. When you type in deaf to a search engine, it will often, I ran into it trying to correct, sarcastically, what I had typed, and it would change it. Sometimes it would change it to the word dead, which is definitely not what I wanted. So I found it easier to use if your website that you're using for your distribution, our library uses Ingram. I found it easier to use like the keyword link. So I would look up a book like Deaf Utopia and then click the different links for the different subject headings that they offered to get a little bit better results. It's also really helpful, words related to deafness. Gallaudet is the university here in the United States that is for deaf people. Gallaudet was one of the men who helped found the very first deaf school in this country. And so, yeah, they have a university press. And if you're looking for nonfiction related to deafness, they have some really good options. So sometimes just straight searching for like their specific, them as a specific publisher can be really helpful. Also, there's different communication companies. One that was discussed at my meeting that I had was people want to get items from Harris Communications. They are now Diglo. And that is a working link. They offer, their main thing is offering like hearing aids, but they also will sell different books related to deafness. They also have things like flashcards or games and movies in ASL. And then also ALA has a Bridging Deaf Cultures interest group, and they are currently forming a committee right now to develop new resources. There's going to be a resource, hopefully there's going to be a committee that discusses books featuring deaf characters specifically to help get that information to libraries so libraries can find them. Okay, so on the programming side, interpreters was the major thing. So this was a cooking class that we paid for with a health literacy grant. It has been, it was a lot of fun. So the person with the apron, of course, is our presenter, and the person sitting next to the table, also facing the audience, is the interpreter. So I just want to take a minute and try an exercise that I picked up at in my ASL for Librarians class about what an interpreter does. So I think everyone is muted. So if you're not, try and mute yourself. Because what I've learned as I've been hiring interpreters is people like in the hearing community don't quite understand what all an interpreter does. So I wanted to do this exercise. So I have found some random text because now you're used to hearing my voice. You've heard it for like 20 minutes now. And that's somewhat sarcastic. But an interpreter is just, you think of it as they're repeating what they hear. So if you're up for it, I'm going to read the opening, was it? Okay, To a Tale of Two Cities. And yeah, try, because the start is, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Well, after I say that, start actually trying to repeat what all I'm saying, if you can, if you're somewhere where you can talk a little bit. So I'm going to start, because that's what you expect an interpreter to do. They're going to repeat what you say. So it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. Okay. So hopefully you're able to maybe kind of sort of repeat what I said a little bit later. The thing about interpreters is not only are they trying to just copy exactly what you say, they're trying to do it in another language. And so I found this exercise really helpful to do with directors or board members who may not understand that fact, because I've had people asking me, like, oh, you took the ASL for librarians class. We won't have to hire interpreters for our programs anymore. No, that's not the case. And so, yeah, hopefully you got a little bit of a feeling for me how hard it can be for people to just interpret. Like, it is a skill set, because you have to remember what people are saying while you're repeating the part they said before that. So yeah, we love people who actually have that gift, because I don't think that is one of my gifts. When you're hiring interpreters in Oklahoma, there's basically two options. So I just want to point out some pros and cons for those options. If you hire freelancers, you can negotiate. You have a little more negotiating room when you hire an interpreter who's freelance. You may even get lucky. Like, I had an event where I thought I was going to need an interpreter, but I didn't have any deaf people show up. But my interpreter just happened to have so much fun at the program herself that she decided, like, not to charge us for that night, which is not usual, because usually if you have an interpreter show up, you're going to have to pay them no matter if the deaf person comes or not. But sometimes there's a little wiggle room with freelance. You may also be able to negotiate things for travel costs. A lot of the interpreters I've hired here in Sulphur, because they live close to this area and they're used to driving like to OSD for stuff, they do not charge me travel costs. Now, on the flip side of that, with an interpreter agency, they're going to have agency fees, because not only are you paying for the interpreter, you're paying for the agency to have found them. You're going to have travel costs, and usually those are pretty set in stone. They will let the interpreter agency will let you know, like, how much per mile that they will charge you. The advantage for an interpreter agency is that usually it's just a call. Like, if you've signed up with an agency, you can call them. They're going to have somebody, they will figure out who's going, and then you just have to pay for it. Because with a freelance, you may have to contact lots of people. You may have, because you'll call one person and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy. And you've just got to make your way down your list. You also will run into, if somebody has to cancel for some reason, you're going to be responsible for that backup. So it's like, it almost feels like you're back at square one, which I say because I had it happen. I had someone, their schedule shifted, they weren't able to make it. And then I'm scrambling to call everyone again who had already called and who had already told me no, trying to figure out what to do. An interpreter agency, they're going to have their crew of people that they have, and they're going to make sure there's someone there if you've signed a contract with them and they said they were going to send someone. So yeah, now for freelance in Oklahoma has its own interpreter registry. So if you've been going on to like the National Registry of Interpreters and not finding very many options, that's because most of our Oklahoma interpreters do not get nationally certified. So this is what the interpreter page looks like. It's not the most friendly for searching. But you can see, like, they have the names here and then their contact information. Interpreting levels are 1 through 5. And I'll tell you like when they expire, which is helpful in case like you know, well, in case they haven't updated this page in a little bit, you can kind of see like, oh, wait, this person's still expired. Did they get it renewed? Well, you can call them and find out. So yeah, and then, yeah, so it gives you a phone number for most people, email. A lot of interpreters, if you have the capabilities to do so, they are open to text messages. I often get a response a whole lot faster when I text people instead of email. So if you find out like last minute that you need an interpreter, texting is often a good idea. Yeah, so a lot of these national certification will say none. They'll also tell you if they have SDE certification, which is the State Department of Education. So like if you're at a school library and you're looking for an interpreter for your school setting, you would need people who are SDE approved because they're like specially certified to work with students and help them. And make sure you get out a map and find like the towns around you. Because like I said, a lot of interpreters are not, let's see, I was trying to, oh, like here's one of the ones I've used. Well, she's actually in Sulphur, but some of them, they'll live in surrounding towns. They'll live in Davis, they'll live in Wynnewood. So going through this list, make sure you know like where the other towns around you are. Because even when I've called people from Davis or Ada, they still don't charge me for the transportation. It's like a nonprofit discount almost. So yeah, keep that in mind. Okay. Yep. So since I've started hiring interpreters, we've had an increase in people coming to our programs. So we have, so it's just a picture of summer reading. Our summer reading programs this year, we topped like 100 people every week. And it was just really awesome. Because we expect so many people, I went ahead and just offered interpreters immediately. And then I was able to put that on the flyers that there would be interpreters at every program. So we were able to reach some deaf children and their families. And then it's also just good for all the kids to see an interpreter and see that as like a regular normal thing. I also recently started about a year ago, a teen advisory group. And since I had been working on this project with the deaf community, I was able to talk to the OSD dorm staff, and they were able to bring their students too. So that upped our numbers tremendously, and just made it a better experience for all of them. So in this picture, they're making like magazine Christmas trees and painting them, and we decorated the library with them. And it was just really great to see kids, kids who are deaf, who are hard of hearing, who are hearing, communicating with each other and interacting with each other in whatever ways worked for them. Because it was interesting because you had kids from Sulphur High who were hearing, who knew some ASL that they had taken at school. And then you had like kids who were new to OSD who were deaf, who didn't know any ASL. So it was this big mix of different communication styles, but it was good because everyone was getting to meet and mingle with others. Okay. And then you may also want to offer programs of special interest to your deaf community. Here at this library, we've started offering, partnering with OSD to do a support group for deaf babies. So that's the picture here. It's a mom and her child, and it's basically story time, but we also invite deaf mentors. So that's the other woman in the picture that's like facing away from the camera. And so she's teaching mom and baby the signs for different words in the book or different pictures that are seen in the book. So we do that every couple of months. And we pull people from like our whole, the whole like southeastern kind of region of the state. Because there's like different, because the school works with those babies. And so they, they'll come here every couple of months and we can support them with those services. And then if you're also looking for things for like displays, Deaf History Month is in April. Deaf Awareness Month is right now. So that display earlier on the collection page, that's currently my display up for Deaf Awareness Month. There's also Claire Gallaudet Week in December. Claire and Gallaudet are the two guys who started the first deaf school in this country, and they both have December birthdays. So usually it's the second week in December that both their birthdays will fall. And it's a good time to discuss like deaf education. Last year, I had the OSD student ambassadors and their sponsor come. The sponsor did a presentation talking about that history of the story of how Claire and Gallaudet met. Like Gallaudet wanted to help his neighbor learn to sign, like what to communicate. The neighbor had a deaf daughter and they needed to communicate. So he like goes to France, he meets Claire, and they end up coming back and creating a deaf school and thereby actually starting ASL. So ASL actually is closer to French Sign Language than it is English. So yeah, but those are all the fun things that you could have programs about and share with your communities. And then also feel free to do like, if you have someone who's willing to lead an ASL class, like that's something that could be hosted at your library. Also ASL chats. Chats are really great. You just, any kind of something where you're getting people together, and then sometimes you'll just see them as silent chats. So just the idea is that it's an event that is completely silent and people are forced to sign the whole time. So you develop fluency in ASL. And so it's just really helpful for no matter what ASL level. Okay, so then resources to help the deaf and hard of hearing. Okay, so these are some of the other offices at OSD. So the Family and Early Childhood Services, those are the ones I work with for our baby support group. And so they cover any kind of services for before a kid is in kindergarten. So if you have, if you know of any children, babies, toddlers, if they're preschool age or younger, this is the office at OSD to contact. They have early childhood education centers across the state. Because they have one here, of course, and then they have, I know there's a program in Chickasha, and there's one in Tulsa. I don't know where else, but if you contact them, they will put you in contact with the one that covers like the county that you're in. They can also connect families with early education specialists. So people who understand, like when we do story time, like in the public library, we're reading to the kids and we know that they're hearing the words and that is developing their language skills. Well, the early education specialists can help bridge that gap because the deaf kids aren't necessarily going to hear your words. So they're able to help bridge that gap and teach parents or whoever who's working with the children how to go ahead and develop their language skills and teach them how to sign, teach them how to communicate. And they'll also do deaf mentors. So they've been taking applications and they will hook families, connect families to a deaf mentor who can work with the family, do ASL with them, teach them ASL, practice their ASL, and connect them to things like deaf chats that might be in the community, so that to make sure that the children have experiences with people who are like them. And then they'll also do consultation services for schools. So if you work at a preschool, if you know a local daycare, anywhere where there is like a deaf child, a deaf baby, they will come and help you figure out what to do and how to best serve that child. And then educational consulting is the team that will cover like school age. So even if a deaf child, for whatever reason, they and their family have decided not to attend OSD, this office can still supply support for them. They can have, they'll come and do classroom observations to help make sure that the classroom is set up and things are happening in the classroom that work best for the child. They can provide IEP support. So when they have like the individual education plan meetings, if you give them a heads up, like they want, I think I saw a month in advance, at least, if you contact them, one of the consultants will come to an IEP meeting to help parents and teachers figure out what to do. And they ask for that month in advance because they'll visit your school beforehand to help see where the child's at. And then they'll come to the IEP meeting and help come up with goals and things. They'll also put together professional development for teachers, and they will help with parent resources also. And then there are also equipment distribution programs. So if you know someone who is in need of equipment, it doesn't matter the age, they will, there may be something that they can be helped with. They have different telecommunication and alerting devices that they give out. So there's just like a short application and people can have access to those things. One that I think a lot of people don't know about, the Senior Citizens Hearing Aid Program. They will give a hearing aid to senior citizens who, like, if they're older and they've lost their hearing, so not necessarily the people who have been like lifelong members of the deaf community, they can fill out the form for this program and get a hearing aid provided for them. I think there's an income cap also, but it's an option for anyone who is older and losing their hearing. They can get support here too. They'll also do children's hearing aids or specialized communication devices. You just have to get with them and they can hook people up. And like I said, all of these things are things that it doesn't matter where you are in Oklahoma, like they'll work with you. Okay. All right, so now ASL. So just some key things about ASL to remember is American Sign Language is a language. It is a complete language. It has its own vocabulary, its own grammar, its own syntax. It's the language of American deaf culture. So when you see deaf with a big D, like it is a culture in and of itself made up of deaf and hard of hearing people. Small d is when you're just talking like the medical condition. And so deaf and hard of hearing people can be part of the American deaf culture. ASL is their official language. And it is language. Just like I mentioned, like ASL is actually really close to French Sign Language. British Sign Language is a completely different thing because it grew up completely separate. So when you're talking about signing, like there are different ones. There's also regional differences. So like when I talk to the kids at OSD, sometimes they'll be like, that's not quite how we do that sign here. Because I took like the national ALA class. And so sometimes there's different things they'll do a little bit different. Just like, some people, well, we say Coke here in Oklahoma, other places they would say soda or pop or whatever. The same thing happens in sign language. There's also Black ASL, because back during the times of segregation, before Brown v. Board of Education, there was still, the deaf schools were also segregated throughout the South. And so at that same time, there was also a movement towards oralism, which is teaching kids to like read lips, and not teach them ASL and teach them to speak. And so while that movement towards oralism was happening in the 1800s and 1900s, a lot of teachers from the white schools did not like the oralism. They left, they went to the Black schools. And since they were segregated off, Black ASL just kind of grew up separate. And I don't know how much Black ASL is here, but I wanted to make that, I want to make sure I mention that there is different things, because it has grown on things like TikTok. There's people who will use Black ASL or teach Black ASL there. Let's see, yeah, there's no written form, so you'll see glossing, which is how they write like what signs you're using. So thank you is just one sign. So that's why there's like a dash there, and it's in all caps, and that means that's the sign you're talking about when you have, if you need to write what a sign is. Things to stay away from, there's signing exact English, or SEE, signed English, which is something people started to do. I think the idea was to help kids learn English easier, but that kind of demotes how ASL is its own language. It has its own grammar. It's not just gestures. There are rules and grammar to it. And so a lot of deaf people will not use signing exact English, and they will point out when a sign is something from exact English. Because, for example, in ASL, there is not a sign for the verb to be. It's just understood when they have their sentences. But if you see like something where it talks about a sign for be to be, it's signing exact English, and that's not the same as ASL. Also, there's baby sign, which has been another point of contention I've had to learn about here in my library, because we have some of those books that we have board books that they say baby sign on them, and they're written by somebody who has like a lot of letters after their name. And while a lot of the books, they'll borrow from ASL, they'll use some of the same signs, they also will use signs that they just make up. And that is not good. I've had OSD elementary kids come in here, they will pick them up and they get a good laugh because it's just gibberish to them. They understand that it's gibberish because it's not ASL. So I do recommend like look and see, like read descriptions on those books. They're starting to print more and more of them that are actual ASL, because babies can learn ASL. Now, sometimes they might have problems with some of the movements, but that's just the same as like in English, if a baby has trouble forming a certain letter, like they'll mispronounce it, but they've got a sense of what the word is. And when they get older and their voice, develops, they'll be able to say it. So it's the same in the deaf community. They consider the same thing with ASL. Yeah, a baby might not make the full movement, but that's just the baby signing it, like it's understood. So when you're learning a sign, these are the things to pay attention to: hand shape, location, movement, palm orientation, and non-manual signs. Because if you change any of these things, a sign it can throw off the entire meaning of the sign. So yeah, and non-manual, that just means all the stuff, like sometimes on questions, you'll raise your eyebrows, and that's like how you add the question mark. Like it's your eyebrows are raised at. So things like that also need to be paid attention to when signing. So most signing starts out with finger spelling. Even though this is really close to English, it is what is used for names and words that you don't know. So, and I wanted to do this particular picture of the alphabet because you've probably seen signs that are different, that have them facing different directions, but this is the actual palm orientation for the alphabet. So if you've ever struggled to read finger spelling, part of the issue, maybe you were used to how they face on those other signs, because this is actually how they're supposed to look when you're looking at someone signing. And then if you want to practice reading finger spelling, that's the link that's here. So and you can set it to do like different words of different length. So like three-letter words, four-letter words, doesn't matter. And then they'll just sign a word and you type in what it is. So it's good practice. Okay, so if you're really interested in learning ASL, this week is the registration for OSD's class. They do classes in the fall and in the spring. They now have its own little website right there. They're currently registering. It's a completely online class. And they just, each week they release recorded videos. It's a good class. I've taken the first one. I'm going to take it again, probably just to review, because it's also really helpful if you know someone, if you have someone you can sign with while you're taking it, just to reinforce the words as you do them. And then also there's the ALA's ASL for librarians. They have level 1 and 2. Each of them are, let's see, 6 weeks apiece. Or actually, we had 12 weeks. It was 6 lessons and we had 12 weeks to do each one. And that was really good. I found it really helpful because it introduced words I could use in my everyday going around the library. Because like when I go and shut the doors at night, I will sign like my door count to myself while I walk back to my desk to write it down. So I could work in practicing like that. Or when someone prints, it doesn't matter if they're deaf or not, maybe I'll just practice the sign for printing or copies or whatever.
Jennifer, I'm going to jump in here so we have a couple minutes for questions.
Oh, yep. Well, I think that's my last one anyway. So yeah.
Okay. All right, great. There we go. There's the resources. There was a question in the chat earlier about the resource you shared about from the Oklahoma Interpreter Registry.
Oh yeah.
About I just lost my chat here. Yeah, sorry. There was a question about some of the interpreters have none by the expiration date or expires. So do they certify individuals for life?
Yeah, basically that means that that person has reached like the top level, like level 5, and they don't make them do the continuing education or credits like others have to do. Because just like how with like public library certification, we have to take so many continuing education hours and then we get renewed. Interpreters do the same thing. They have to regularly take classes to learn about signing, interpreting in different situations. But once you've reached level 5 and you've been level 5 for so long, I don't know the exact parameters of it, but it just means that they've been considered to have enough experience. They don't have to continue do those continuing ed classes. So, yeah.
Anyone else want to jump in with a question?
You may have said this and I might have missed it, but did you mention if there was a charge for ALA's class that you took?
Oh, yeah. ALA, yeah, I used some grant money to pay for that. So yeah, that one does charge. And they should have another one. I think I heard they may offer another one in like October. Okay.
We'll make sure we get Jennifer's slides from her and share those out with the evaluation link. I've got the names of everyone who attended today. Thank you for that. The session evaluation link has also been dropped in the chat. If you have a moment to click on that and evaluate. Jennifer, thank you for your time today and for sharing your experience with us. And thank you everyone for attending. We appreciate it for the first EDI Lunch and Learn this year. And the next one is scheduled for October 12th. It's Beyond the Binary, or if you're interested in that, check out the OLA website and sign up for that one. Thank you again for being here today, everyone. And thank you, Jennifer.
Okay. Yeah, does anyone who's still on here have anything, or do you have a specific situation at your library that you're wondering about?
I was wondering about the resources for collections, so thanks for sharing that information. That was helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I had grant money and it was like, ooh, how do I spend this? Because I was typing in deaf to a search engine and not getting good results.
Did you decide which programs that you would hire an interpreter for and which ones you wouldn't?
Oh shoot, I didn't say this earlier. If it's something big, like summer reading, I just go ahead and do it. If it's a craft class, I usually go ahead and schedule one. Other stuff, I'm trying to work with marketing to figure out like the best way to phrase it, but putting like an accessibility sentence on flyers that say like, if you need interpreting, email or come by the library. So people can make that request when they sign up. So then, yeah, then I just know that, oh, well, I wasn't expecting interest, but here it is. So we can still get an interpreter.
Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing and for all those great resources. I appreciate it.
All right. All right.